Clayton, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Now, why Plan N? Before we really dive into the deep reasons of why Plan N is a good option, we also just want to talk about why it's relevant right now, why it's something that we think is worth our time doing a webinar about and whatnot. So this webinar, actually, we've updated it, but this is a webinar that we've had for a couple of years because a lot of the things that we are seeing happening right now in the industry, we kind of saw coming. And so Plan N is something that has been on our radar for a long time, but we know that now Plan N is something that is on a lot of people's radars for rate increases and stuff like that that we'll talk about coming up. But we do love talking about this. We feel very passionate about Plan N just because we know it can be a really great option for people, especially with those rising prices and whatnot. But Clayton, I'll kind of let you dive into what those rate increases are looking like and how that's affecting the Medicare supplement market.
For sure. So like Sadie was saying, this is something that was kind of predictable of an outcome, just like what happened with Plan F. Let's rewind the clock back a few extra years. Then from before we even started this was Plan F got all of the GI, all of the open enrollment business. So obviously there's no health questions. There's a lot of people just getting on a plan regardless of their health, which made that book of business or that block of business have higher loss ratios, which the carriers have to combat because they're in it for money as well, that they need to figure out, okay, well, how do we make this profitable still? And it's obviously rate increases. So then what we saw was Plan G becoming the new, after the macro laws kicked in, Plan G is the new hotness. So that's where everyone's going on their open enrollment, guaranteed issue, stuff like that going forward. So following that similar trend, you say, okay, well, after some years of this is going to happen to Plan G as well, just like it did with Plan F, right? And so we were looking at everything, and carriers were also like, well, you know, Plan N is very similar, so we see people trending that direction. There's just some cost sharing outside with it. So we'll get into those parts as well, but mainly looking at those rate increases and how they're going up faster. Before, if I said there's a 5 or 10% rate increase, no one really batted an eye.
Right.
We kind of expected that. It got, you know, annoying for clients to be like, well, I'm paying more again this year. I'm paying more again this year.
Right.
But now the unfortunate thing is carriers are getting hit with those loss ratios post-COVID now.
Right.
And so talking with these different carriers, talking with their actuarials on there, basically what we're hearing is mid-teens is going to start to get a lot more familiar with these rate increases, which we know when you're starting to look at one of your clients who's been on your books for a while, 15% rate increase hits a lot harder than a 6 does.
Right, exactly.
When we're looking at how much they're already paying for their premium.
Well, and you even, whenever you're going through their options and whatnot, whenever they sign up for these Medicare supplements, they know to expect a certain amount of rate increase, but this sort of rate increase is like, whoa, 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 this is not quite what I signed up for. But it's something that we're seeing across the board. It's not just one carrier, two carriers, it's across the board. And it's something that is pretty necessary, like you were just saying, on the carrier side, where they have to be able to make up for all of that. So yeah,
and what comes down to is you have to find that next best option for your med sub clients. Not every med sub client is going to see a rate increase and say, I want to jump ship, let's go get on an MA plan. One, because it might not fit great for them, depending like where they are, if there's good networks there, if there's not. Two, some people still just like the concept of, I pay you X amount of dollars, you take care of my health insurance.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's a very straightforward transaction to some people, and they don't want that confusion of a Medicare Advantage plan. So what do? We look at Plan N. So we'll go over to this next slide, I think, where we get into a little bit more specifically about how it works. So how it works, and y'all, this is a really good slide to start throwing questions on, because this is where I'm going to try to get into just more specifics about Plan N. So fire over in that question box. But how it works is, think of Plan N like Plan G with cost sharing. If you go to some of these underwriting guides or just the Medicare and You, where it kind of lays out all of the different plans in a little square chart, like I can see it with my eyes closed, where you'll see Plan F and you'll see kind of every single box checked off. You go over to Plan G and you see pretty much every box checked off except that Part B deductible. And that's kind of the give and take of a Plan G to a Plan F. If you go one step further, Plan N is exactly the same so far, but then we're going to start looking at what that last box is that's not checked. It's the excess charges, which I just saw a question on that. So getting into that, we'll dive right into the excess charges, because that is what I talk about the most when I'm talking about Plan N with our agents on the phone,
Right.
is the concern about excess charges.
Well, for sure, because you go from Plan F, people went from Plan F to Plan G, and there's really only one major difference. And it seems like such a big difference to go from Plan G to Plan N. Some of those risks feel a little bit scary. They feel a little bit riskier than the jump was from Plan F to Plan G. And a lot of people that give us some sort of pushback on Plan N, excess charges is where it always comes down to. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
So, Mike, I'm very glad did you ask a question about that, because that's what I wanted to kind of head off here first. And I'll do a little good news, bad news. We'll start off with the bad news of, there's excess charges. There's that possibility of excess charges. It's up to, or it's 15% more than what Medicare allows a hospital or a provider to charge. So Olivia's silly example is always with if you had a knee surgery and it cost $100, do the math, they're allowed to charge you $15 more than your knee surgery. Granted, you found a really good coupon apparently on your knee surgery because it's only $100.
Yeah.
But they're only allowed to charge you 15% more than what Medicare allows. So yes, if that number is not 100 and it's 100,000, that number seems a lot more scary. But the good news on that fact is that 90% of doctors out there accept Medicare assignment. The big ones that don't are maybe like the top cardiologist in the world will say, no, I'm going to charge what I'm going to charge with what Medicare will allow them to charge extra. But it's really hyper specialties and psychiatric doctors. So when you're going to see something for mental health, typically that's something you'll bump into, or more risk of bumping into with that. But there's easy ways to show and check those out beforehand, before switching a client over, which we'll get into and kind of show you guys where to find that information. But 90% of doctors, or over 90% of doctors, accept Medicare assignment. So that big scary number goes away.
Yeah.
And then it goes down to, what's my other cost sharing options? And that's going to be with copays. Now it's up to $20 with a doctor visit and up to $50 with an emergency room visit. And I always, always, always say up to, because it is worded that way specifically. It's up to $20. A lot of times it's how the doctor's office bills that to Medicare. I've seen everything from my clients never, or I've heard everything from my clients never see a copay on these things. Their doctor, it never happens. I've seen $12 a lot randomly. I don't know why $12 pops up so much, but
it's a good number.
12 is a popular number for these doctors. They're like, I don't know, give us $12. So that is something where it's up to $20 and up to $50 on an emergency room visit. I haven't heard so much feedback on the emergency room side because it's not as frequent, I'm assuming.
Well, I think that's the thing there is sometimes people see, especially with those Medicare supplements, they see, oh, well, now they have copays on this. That's a big reason why people don't want to have a Medicare supplement or whatever it may be. But it is important to remember most of your clients are not going to be paying that $50 copay. And even if they were, they're not going to be paying it that often because they're hopefully not going to the ER that often. So you just have to think about frequency. Same thing with the excess charges is, yes, there is that risk, but how many of your clients are going to these high level specialties, are going to this 10% of doctors within the nation that don't accept Medicare assignment? You just kind of have to do your research and do that in the fact finding. It takes a little bit more work. But not any more work than Medicare Advantage clients, making sure that the doctors they want to see are in their networks and stuff like that. It's just a little more work than what we might be used to with Medicare supplements.
It's like doing a little, like a diet version of diving into an MA plan, doing all those research, because you're still going to be looking at their drugs with their PDP. And or you're looking at up to that $50 with the ER. So like, okay, I've got a couple copays to worry about here, but then you can start doing the math, which is the next point here, is the price and cost. So when you're looking at up to $20 being the charge for a doctor visit, because we'll stick with that one, that's the more frequent one. Typically, the most competitive Plan G versus the most competitive Plan N is going to be in that $20 to $30 range different, which, okay, that sounds all right, but then I'm leaving them at risk for more copays or more cost sharing. But when you're starting to think, does my client go to the doctor every single month? No? Okay, so we can scratch off, let's say, 6 of those months and save 6 of those $20 copays.
Right.
Like, okay, now I just saved them that much money. Are they on the most competitive Plan G that's out there? Probably not. Or if they are, that Plan G is getting hit with those rate increases that we just talked about. Now, Plan N is still going to hit rate increases just like any other med sup, but typically what we see is the way that they do these rate increases, it's F sees a big chunk, maybe G sees the same, and Plan N sees a little bit less.
Yeah.
Now, there has been some that I see Plan N, they just take the same rate increase across the board. But again, you're doing a percentage of a much lower number already.
Right.
So those are just things to consider with the cost of these, especially, I just missed my foot on the stool.
Almost took a tumble here.
So when you're looking at those costs, just kind of assessing that. Does the client use their plan frequently? Do they see the doctor more than 6 times a year?
Right.
And just kind of mathing it out with them to see if it's worth eating that kind of rate increase that their Plan G is taking to alleviate some risk, or like we said, if this is just a good option for some of your clients that are out there.
Or even just the idea of having copays for your Medicare supplement clients. Do they actually really mind that too much, or do you just assume maybe they will because they are a Medicare supplement client? I think that's what's important here is because this kind of breaks the normal stereotype for what you think a Medicare supplement client might look like. Sometimes people can be like, well, I don't know if they're going to like this. Just chit chat, make sure that you're talking to all of your clients to make sure that they are still on the right plan. A lot of times we have people say, well, at this point, why don't they just move to a Medicare Advantage plan?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe so, but you have to have that conversation first. They might still like the ease of everything else, the no networks, all that sort of stuff about a Medicare supplement versus having to just switch over to that MA.
For sure. And something else that I always talk about with Plan N is just kind of looking at where you can allocate some of those different funds. If you're switching, especially a Plan F client, switching to a Plan N, they're saving probably somewhere between $50 and $75. So then you're thinking, okay, why not switch to a Medicare Advantage plan? Well, I can keep them not having to worry about their Part B deductible. They're going to Plan N. So they have to take their Part B deductible now. However, we have $50, $75 to work with. Mm-hmm. Do they need a cancer plan? Do they need a dental plan? What do they need a final expense plan? Because you're starting to be able to reallocate money where they're not just eating a rate increase and paying more and getting the same thing.
Right.
So you can start looking at those with your clients as well. So definitely something to consider. I don't want to say it's just an instant, this works for everybody. Right. This is just another option out there for your clients to discuss before they take that dive into a Medicare Advantage plan.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. It's all about just making sure that, knowing that there are other options out there for these people, that these rate increases aren't the end of the world, that there are solutions that actually could be very, very good fits. Like we said, even before these rate increases hit, a couple years ago, we were talking about how Plan N could be a really good option for some of your clients. It's just like any other option. It's not a one size fits all. And it's just good to know that Plan N is something that is a solid option out there.
Yeah, and also while we're talking about the different costs and different things that are associated with that, looking at just how Plan N is going to stay more stable and for some years to come at least, because med subs, it always seems like there's only so many letters in the alphabet, but they'll keep adding more if necessary.
Right.
So what we are looking at with this is Plan N has that cleaner block of business like Plan G did years prior.
Yeah.
They had a lot more only underwritten business going to there, a lot healthier clientele getting put on those books. So they've had that kind of stability and building those numbers. And it's something carriers are saying they're seeing more of. Agents that I'm talking to, where a few years back, it was like, yeah, we look at it, but I don't really write it. Now a lot of more people are writing Plan N. So just because you might think it's not a great fit for your clients, there's people out there that are going to be trying to sell this to your clients. You want to be the one talking to them about this being an option.
Yeah. Hooray.
Hooray.
Alrighty, so hopefully you guys kind of get the gist of the buzz, if you will, that we have about Plan N. Now what we want to do is we want to show you on Medicare.gov how to look up providers using that provider search. Hopefully that's a tool you guys know about. If not, you'll learn about it today, but we'll show you here how to, let me pull this up, how to look up, I can't multitask. You're going to have to tell them how to look up those excess charges on Medicare.gov.
Yes.
I can't do two
You're
things
gonna have
at
to
once. Oh goodness. And of course it's wanting to be a little bit. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so we're on Medicare.gov.
Ah.
Sadie, I'll drive once you get the.
There we go. Okay. All right, we're there.
He's like, oh my God, it doesn't work. Okay, so here we are, Medicare.gov. We're gonna go down here to find care providers. This little mouse wheel doesn't work apparently.
And let us know if you guys aren't able to see the screen. Sometimes whenever we switch it, it has some issues. Just let us know, but it should be on Medicare.gov now.
Okay, so I'm gonna get this out of the way. So we are gonna go here to the find providers. We'll allow it this time.
We'll allow it this time.
So we're gonna go to doctors and clinicians. We're here in Columbia, so I'm just gonna fire our zip code in there, and I'm going to do primary care, because that's kind of, again, what we talk about being the obvious concern is just, I go to see my primary care doctor. I don't want to pay up to $20 every single time, or worry about excess charges. What do I do? So it's like, okay, let's look to see if we have any excess charges here. So when we go start searching, it kind of goes through and lists the ones closest out to us. You kind of guys have probably seen this before. But the thing I want you to look at is this little $ right here. It says charges the Medicare approved amount. So this means that doctor accepts Medicare assignment, AKA no worry about excess charges.
Yeah.
So as we continue to go through this list, this wheel not working is so weird. So we'll go through and we'll start seeing a bunch of $signs. A lot of $signs, a lot of $signs, a lot of $signs. Now, what I want to do here, just for kicks, I'll tell you guys, I have not done this prior to this, so let's look at therapy. Oh, they're gonna pull up, no, wouldn't be I can't spell psychiatrist. Just pretend like I'm typing, guys. I'm really good at spelling.
Yeah, all right.
Boom. So let's just look. Let's just see if any of these, this is kind of my area of concern. And right now we're kind of going through and seeing the psychiatrists are accepting Medicare assignment in our area.
In our area. So like we said, make sure that you're looking these up for your area. It might be completely different. Quite honestly, I was expecting there to be a little,
At least
a few on here that didn't have it, just because a lot of times those like niche things are when they don't have it on here. But in our area, it's looking pretty good.
It's looking all right.
Yeah.
So there'd be less cause for concern, especially this being kind of one of those areas, but doing this with the doctors that they're typically seeing. So like we said, kind of the diet version of what you have to do for a Medicare Advantage plan,
right,
is talk to them about their doctors. Let's go look and double check to make sure, especially if that client's inkling of concern is that excess charges, because if it's their concern, you guys are probably already concerned about that as well. Let's just alleviate all of that together, do it on the Medicare.gov really quick, and make sure that they're going to be taken care of. Now, if you see a doctor that they're constantly seeing that is not accepting Medicare assignment, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it's something that you want to express that risk to the client. And that's kind of all we ever do, is just talk about the different risks that are out there. So keeping your eye on those different things. This search tool is very easy. It's very fluid. I've never had any problems with this, as I've had multiple other problems with Medicare.gov.
Right, yeah,
So,
that's exactly right. Let's see. So, never known a good psychologist accepting Medicare, but you can instruct your client to submit the bills with a claim form to Medicare. and what Medicare pays will be provided to the beneficiary as a
Nice.
payment. Yeah, awesome. But yeah, as far as, like we said, this is just our area. So, and it looks like basically almost all the psychologists in our area, do accept it, but it might be different in yours, and then that might not work for your clients. It just kind of depends. But for, a lot of different specialists and stuff like that, it might
That's
work.
the
Okay.
concern. And the mental health field, for whatever reason, is what doesn't really agree with Medicare sometimes,
Right.
which it seems like you guys have run into in the past as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So
What's the buzz, Sadie?
what's the buzz? I know we've already talked about that. Okay.
So here now, I want to kind of quickly show you guys how to quote this product. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with our CSG quote engine, but I always want to make sure that we're expressing this side as well. So as we go through, we're just going to want to make sure that you're entering the plan in, sorting by price. That's pretty typical. You select your letter plan and go in through there. And remember that you can compare a plan N and a plan G on the same quote using the CSG quoting tool. If you're using on Medicare Center or Integrity for Agents, I should say, the CSG quote engine will pull up and look the exact same as this, just kind of a different avenue to get there. Now, if you're using Medicare Center, it is going to show on that CSG quote engine all the carriers that are out there, not just the ones that Senior Marketing Specialist is contracted with. So if you're using the CSG quote engine and you see something that you don't have, you know you can get contracted with us, where if you go through Medicare Center, it could be we don't have XYZ carrier, but we have the next one.
Right.
So either way, personal preference, but I want to make sure you guys know that's going to look very similar here. And I love this, that you grabbed a couple of the more popular plans, or the plan G here in Columbia is looking really nice with Cigna recently. Seeing that a lot, $140, not bad. Then you look at the plan N being about $20-ish cheaper. So kind of like lines up with what we were talking about. I'm sure Sadie grabbed a number that worked out real good for us there, but Cigna is a popular plan in our area. So that's kind of what we wanted to compare.
And it's also just a big brand name as well, which of course we know is a big selling point for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when you're going through the quote engine, making sure that you select multiple options here, and then you can compare them side by side. So you can see what it would look like with any household discount, what that annual rate's going to look like. And that's a really good number for comparing plan N, because then you can ballpark how many times they see the doctor and give them that worst case scenario copay as amount.
Right.
The excess charges, again, are going to be a little bit unpredictable, because if they accept or don't accept Medicare assignment, we have to worry about 15% over that amount. Now, Mark had a question here. Do you know how excess charges are paid? Do you mean how the client pays those excess charges, how it's billed? Because I believe it's just going to get billed to them via the hospital. But to be honest with you, that part of the billing gets into a whole world that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
So what we want to look at again here is going through the different phases and different things that are on here going through comparison wise. But again, that annual rate, and if they're getting a household discount, they also include that number. But being able to kind of add up those copays and give them, like, if you had one ER trip and you saw your doctor once a quarter, we add X amount of dollars on there and here's our rate, and see if that's something that they're willing to switch to. Because again, like I said here, you pulled a really great rate for Plan G. That's something that they might have Missouri anniversaried to, but not what they're on currently. So when you're sitting down with, I say Missouri anniversary, I forget how often that we talk to agents all over the place.
Right.
So like, if they're able to switch to that plan with no underwriting, great. Let's look at something like that. If they're healthy enough and want to save even more money than just a few $10, $15, they can start looking at Plan N. So just remember how this is another option for your clients. And I don't believe there's another thing after that.
Nope, that's it. We tried to keep it pretty short and sweet today. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the questionnaire box. Here, we've been getting a lot of interaction, which is good. We know you guys are awake and paying attention. Haven't quite hit that 3 o'clock snooze fest yet, but go ahead and throw those questions in there. We'll be here for just a few more minutes. And then, of course, we would love to have a conversation with you if you're not quite convinced. We try to keep these webinars short because there's a lot of people, but please feel free to call us. We'd love to have a conversation with you to figure out what best plan ends are in your area, how to figure that out, how to have this conversation about these rate increases with those MedSup clients. Yeah.
A couple notes I'll throw out there while we're waiting on some questions to come in is if you have a United Healthcare contract, you might not be familiar with their plan toggle feature, which is something I like to highlight when I'm having these plan in discussions, because with United Healthcare, you're able to have your clients toggle to a lesser plan than they're on currently. The only caveat is, I'll throw this out here before it comes up as a question, no, you cannot switch from F to G, but you can switch from F to N. Without underwriting, the client will be able to get approved for that United Healthcare plan in,
Sweet.
or a plan G to a plan in. So they can get switched through over there even without underwriting if they're on a United Healthcare plan and want to take the United Healthcare plan in. So it's something that's a really good option, especially for this expanding amount of states that have either different birthday rules, anniversary rules, whatever it might be. If they're on a United Healthcare plan, you can switch them to a plan in, and then they are on that plan. So again, I'll talk about Missouri. If they switch over to a Missouri anniversary plan in, or United Healthcare plan in, sorry, and get switched over to plan in, then the next year they're eligible to switch over through out using Missouri anniversary. Now you could do that prior to their anniversary date and have to look at, okay, now this is going to move the anniversary of this policy and how that's going to affect the rates. But it is definitely something to consider. A very easy process. They just have a form that you're able to fill out. Would love to talk with any about those going forward.
Let's see, with Terry, an article stated that hospitals may stop accepting Medicare Advantage plans. If on a supplement, can that be a problem? One, they are two different things. So in theory, it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be affected. Maybe PDPs might be something, but also I'd be interested to hear where that article came from. We haven't gotten quite word of that. Have you? Maybe you're a little bit with
a little bit.
Okay.
I think I can kind of connect some dots here, but so there's certain hospital networks that are only accepting their plan. They build what
Right.
I forgot what the term is, but they build a plan that's built around their own network.
Okay.
Kaiser Permanente is a big example. They have the Kaiser plans, and they are for Kaiser doctors. They all work together and make it a little bit more seamless. Billing's easier for them. They see their doctors. They know what they're handling. So those hospitals typically won't accept outside Medicare Advantage plans.
Got it.
Now, a Medicare supplement is going to work where Medicare is accepted. So as long as that hospital still takes Medicare, a Medicare supplement client's not going to have to worry about those same networks.
Let's see. Moo says doctors can accept the Medicare, the MC charge, and then add the 15%. So the doctor can do both. Seems a little vague from the carriers.
That's not typically what I'm hearing from the carriers. I was at the Medicare Sales University, and they were talking about Plan N quite a bit. And there's a few carriers on there that were talking about Medicare assignment. So I'm not sure where that would come up, but if it does, that is something that we need to escalate to the carrier and see what happened with the billing on this, because if they're accepting Medicare assignment, they're not charging excess charges. Those are kind of conflicting things there with billing.
Is that toggle in the producer manual? Please send me that info.
They don't have a lot in the producer manual, but they do have a form that helps explain it a little bit more. Form 4C.
This is what we were just talking about yesterday, right?
Yep.
Yes, there might be we might be putting together something to kind of help people navigate this a little bit more, because there isn't much out there. So that's a good question. We were kind of having the same question yesterday.
Yeah, so I'll send you that form and the screenshot of the exact part of the form that they would need to fill out, but it kind of talks about those toggle options. And do you get paid on UHC toggles? Yes, you do. It will be paid at the commission that it was previously. So if you wrote them on a Plan G, it's going to pay that Plan G commission going forward, or Plan F, whatever that bit is. And I will throw that out there too, that typically carriers will lift up the plan in a little bit to match the lower premiums, because they want that business going there. They don't want you guys to see a lower number and be like, well, I'm not going to do that then.
Right.
So definitely look at that. Talk to your upline about your commissions on that and how those would work though.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we're going to go ahead and get you guys out of here. Here is our contact information. You can reach us at 800-689-2800. As always, you can also reach us at live chat on smsteam.net. If you just need something quick and fast, or you're in front of a client or something like that, please feel free to contact us however you want. If you want more just general training and whatnot, not specifically on Plan In, but just anything else, we have our university page as well. But of course, give us a call if you have any questions, and you will be receiving that follow-up email and that follow-up call as well as a copy of this recording. So yeah, thanks guys so much for joining us. Thanks, Clayton. But yeah, we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, guys. See ya.